think we can get started because once again, I have a lot that I want to say. We're going to talk about number four, number five. So yesterday we did one, two, and three, and today we're going to do number four, number five. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the challenge and about some of our writers' experiences and everything. And of course, I hope to convince you to join us in 2026. Okay. So if you are ready, I'm going to share my screen. And here we are. Okay, I'm going to close the 700 windows. I'm still sending badges. It feels like the badges are never ending this year. It's fantastic and wonderful. I'm so excited, but it's a lot to keep track of. I'm also going to turn off my camera again, just because I don't want any lag while I'm speaking and you can't see me anyway as I'm showing my screen. And then we are going to get started if everyone's ready. I just need to go all the way to session 2. I'm hoping you at least got an inciting moment down yesterday. I'm hoping if you could do the 4-quarter summary, that's always very cool. So remember, this is where we ended yesterday to summarize each quarter of your story. But here we are today for session 2. So if you're ready, I'm going to get going. Okay. Let's quickly do a very quick recap of what we discussed yesterday. So remember I said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is what we're going to cover in our story or in this class today. So number 1 on our list was the goal. The goal comes out of the inciting moment. The inciting moment is the moment that starts your story. So it's a big scene, it's an important scene, it's the catalyst, it's what's going to propel your character essentially for the next 80,000 words. Goals are better if they are concrete. Okay, so climb up the mountain, rescue a loved one, find the perfect house, whatever that goal is, you need to give your character something to do. Okay, then while they're doing this, we're going to have 2 sources of conflict. So remember, the goal that your character wants to pursue is opposed by a character called the opposition character. And that character is a huge source of conflict, but they're not the only source of conflict. So we have external conflict and internal conflict. So that's number 2 on our list. External conflict is own worst enemy. That is car chases, huge screaming matches. It is weather. It is all of those kinds of things that get in the way of the story. These are physical challenges that your characters face. Then we have the internal conflict, which is the internal challenges that your characters face. And these internal characters are what your character needs to overcome while they're in pursuit of the story goal. So while they're climbing the mountain, while they're finding the perfect house, they're learning things about themselves, they're growing, they're changing, they're becoming a new person. Okay, so those are the 2 kinds of conflicts we need in a story. We do need both. Okay, even if you want to go for a more character-driven story, you still need the external conflict. Otherwise, the internal conflict is not going to be resolved. Okay, and vice versa. If you only have internal conflict, it's going to be a very introspective character sitting on the couch who is not going to do a lot of stuff. And we like the doing of the stuff as readers. Okay, and then number 3. So remember, we have a 3-act structure. And act 1, act 2, act 3, but we divide those 3 acts into 4 quarters because our second act is by far our longest act. So it's double the length of the first and the second act. So the first act is our first quarter, act 2 is our quarter 2 and quarter 3, and then we have act 3 is our quarter 4. Okay. So that's just how we divide our book into smaller chunks. It's something that we do a lot on Deadlines for Writers is we take very big projects and we break them down into small manageable chunks so that we don't get overwhelmed, so that our work doesn't feel out of control. Okay, so if you're ready, I'm going to start again. We ended with the example of the writer yesterday. I'm going to start with another story example. This is about a banker. I know there are plot holes in this thing. It's by no means a literary masterpiece, but I want you to see how rough my story ideas are when I start. Okay, I do a lot of ironing out in my story, and then I figure it out as I go along. Okay, so if you are ready, let's start with our banker. Okay, our banker is having a great day. His first appointment is with a brand new client who is signing with him. This is a huge coup for their branch, which specializes in bespoke banking services for the ultra rich. He has breakfast with his gorgeous fiancée. He kisses her and leaves for work. A few minutes into the meeting, the new client draws a gun and demands to be taken down to the exclusive client's vault. Only he has access to, the manager. In the vault, they steal a specific, very valuable set of emeralds. He tries to stop them, but he is shown a video of his fiancée gagged and tied to a dining room chair. He is forced to help them escape. So this is our inciting moment. This is our moment of change in the story. So remember, in our inciting moment, we meet our character in their everyday environment. So he's going off to work. He's having a great day, says goodbye to his lovely fiance, and he's about to sign this really great new client. Okay. Everyday story goal. That's what he does every day. Then we need a moment to disrupt, and that is the robbery, where the client draws the gun and says, "Take me down. I want these emeralds," and then they go. Remember what I said yesterday? Fiction is a matter of your character has a problem. They try to solve the problem. By solving the problem, a bigger problem has been created. So our character has no choice. He has a gun to his head. He has to take down and help to open the vault for them to get the emeralds. He is going to try and stop them. But when he's shown a video of his fiancée gagged and tied to his dining room chair, he's forced to help them escape. So he, for example, wants to trip the silent alarm, and they say, "I see what you're doing. You can't do that. This is where your fiancée is tied up." So now not only has he not signed the new client, he has just been robbed and his fiancée has been tied up, okay, or is in danger. Can you see how I'm stacking the odds against this character? And that's just to get our story started. So then we realize they've taken his fiancée, but promised to leave her on a specific street corner. This is a safety precaution. So as soon as they leave, he does his job, he hits the panic button, and he rushes off to go save his fiancée. Now, this is not his best idea. Leaving a crime scene never is, but this is fiction, and we want to add as much conflict and tension as possible. So when he arrives at the agreed upon destination, his fiancée is nowhere to be seen. His phone rings. The robbers are furious. The emeralds are fake. The manager says they're definitely not. They threaten to kill his fiancée if he does not deliver the jewels. Okay, can you see how I'm stacking the odds against this character the whole time? Our manager is flabbergasted. How are the emeralds fake? Where is his girlfriend? What must he do? So then, of course, when we're in trouble, we phone a friend. His friend, luckily, is the head of IT at the bank, or the head of IT security at the bank, and he tells him about the problem of the fake jewels. The IT friend says, "Buddy, you have bigger problems. The police just watched the footage of the robbery, and it looks like the manager was helping the robbers. So the police are waiting to arrest him." Again, can you see how I am stacking the odds? Okay. Missing girlfriend, he's about to be arrested. Where are the real emeralds? He's going to get fired because he lost the emeralds. And this is how we stack the problems against him. Okay. Now, the IT friend, because your buddy is always going to help you to try and achieve your goals, he says he's going to look at the vault footage. I'll give him the vault footage and they meet. So the IT friend leaves the bank and they meet and watch the footage together. Accidentally, the IT friend rewinds the tape a little bit too far, giving away my age because, you know, this is a good old VHS. What they see on the tape, they watch his fiancée break into the vault the night before. She replaces the real emeralds with fakes. He is gobsmacked and he almost misses a clue. She specifically leaves her engagement ring next to a safety deposit box with a certain number. His IT friend points it out. Now you can imagine this guy's emotions are at war, okay? He was terrified for his fiancée. She's been kidnapped by these really bad people. And now he realizes, but she might be a bad person as well. Okay. Emotions at war. He is not sure what is going on, but he thinks it is a clue. He examines the numbers. And so this is, she left it in front of a certain security box with a number on it. And he examines the numbers and he knows, he has an idea of where she would have hidden the gems. So his time to save her is running out. The police are closing in. And then the IT friend agrees to do research on his fiancée while he goes to find the gems. Because he thought he was dating some lovely, I mean, let's make her a real estate agent, a primary school, a school teacher, whatever she needs to be. And meanwhile, she has expertise to rob this really, really fancy bank. So he needs to go and find the gems. But the IT friend is going to research and find out who the hell this girlfriend is. On his way to the suspected hiding place, his IT friend phones to say he has found several aliases for the girlfriend. Her known accomplice is the guy who robbed the bank. The accomplice is a really bad violent criminal who is wanted for murder. The banker is furious, hurt, and confused. Blue lights flash behind him. A car chase ensues. He must find out what's going on. He loses the police and makes his way towards the suspected hiding place. It is the pier at their favorite beach where he proposed. The number that corresponded with the safety deposit box was spray painted on the pillar where they had stood during the proposal, and it ended up, much to their amusement, in the selfie they had taken that day. He digs in the sand at the base of the pillar and finds the small bag of gems and a folded letter. The letter explains that he was the target of a con and they had planned to rob the bank using his manager's access. His brother was her accomplice and the plan was for them to steal the jewels and flee. But she fell in love with him, the Mark, and to save him, she stole the jewels first. She apologizes and hopes the letter will absolve him of blame with the authorities. Relieved, panicked, and worried, he takes the jewels. He must decide between going to the police or saving her. Perhaps he can trade the jewels for her life, but then he will have to go to jail. Is there a way to save her and return the jewels? He calls the cops, makes a deal with them. He phones the robbers and says he has the jewels. They arrange a meeting. The fiancé is there, bruised and tied up, but they reunite as the cops arrive and arrest the robber. Yay! Okay. So in this case, the antagonist, the setting, and the subplots all make it harder to reach the goal. That's the outer conflict. The emotions, the doubt, the fear are all the inner conflict. But I love her. Who is she? Why is she doing this to me? I'm worried. I'm scared for her life, but she's the one who's betrayed me. And this is how it's going to build up and build up and build up. Okay. Are we clear up until this point? Are there any questions, any thoughts? I mean, there are lots of bloopers in that. We'll fix it. And go as I'm writing, I'll go, okay, this needs to be strengthened. I need some clarity here and stuff, and we'll fix it. Okay. So if you're all comfortable with that, it's just another example of a story idea. If you can have the entirety of your story like that, it's really, really helpful. I rarely do, but here we'll go through. Okay. We'll come back to the structure and plot again in a moment when we discuss number 5, but I quickly want to talk about the 4 core characters. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at this again. You have one goal. You have 2 sources of conflict. You have 3 acts and 4 core characters. You will or can have more characters in your story, but they won't necessarily be core characters. The reason I harp on 4, and I know there are a lot of you going, oh, I have a huge cast, I have way more and stuff. If that's really what you want to do, go for it. But what I want you to really, really keep in mind is as beginner writers, we add character before we add plot, which means you're going to end up with this huge cast of characters, but they have nothing to do. Okay, so you've all been to these awkward parties where you don't know anyone and everyone's standing around eating funny looking snacks and no one actually has a clue what to do and no one knows each other and they're just milling about. That is what you don't want for your story. Okay, so every time before you add a new character, ask yourself, can I go back to one of the characters I've already created and rather use them instead? Okay. So who are your 4 core characters? My rule of thumb, let's give you the rule of thumb. The fewer characters you have, the stronger plot you have. Because when you add character, keep adding characters, you inflate your word count. And when you inflate your word count, you don't add plot. Okay, so character before plot. All right. Who are these four core characters? Okay, we've already met two of these characters. It's our protagonist. Remember, that is the character we meet in the inciting moment. This is the protagonist who pursues the goal. So each one of these characters has a very, very specific function. Okay. The job of your protagonist is to pursue the story goal. Okay. Can you see why I keep carrying on? What's your goal? What's your goal? What's your goal? Because if you don't have a plot, or if you don't have a goal, what's your character going to do? Okay. The protagonist pursues the story goal. Then we have the antagonist. We've also met him or them, or the threat that they have established. So what do we need to know? The antagonist, the function of the antagonist is to oppose the story goal. Protagonist pursues the goal, antagonist opposes the goal. Okay. A friend character. So you saw in my example with the banker, it was less prominent in the writer example, but like I said, that one was even rawer than this one. I have to go through with the banker. His IT friend was the one who helped him. When he was in trouble, he phoned the IT friend. When he needed someone to do research for him, he phoned the IT friend. When he needed someone to give him the footage, he phoned the IT friend. Okay. So what is the function of the friend character in the story? Is quite simply they help the protagonist to achieve the goal. Okay. This is kind of like, think about your own friends. Who do you phone to help you bury the body? This is the kind of friend that your protagonist needs. Okay. Then you have the love interest. Now, the love interest is an interesting character. They can sometimes hijack our stories because I do think we're all a sucker for a love interest or a love story. But the love interest distracts the protagonist from their goal. This means that the love interest has no interest in that character's goal. So if the protagonist have if the love interest distracts the protagonist from the goal, okay? So what we have is, let me give you an example. So for example, let's say you're telling the story about a character who is vying for promotion. There is an opportunity and they're appointing a new CEO and your character wants this job, okay? He is going to work even harder to finish his studies, to do that MBA. He is even going to stay late at the office. He's going to put in lots of extra hours over the weekend. And the love interest, let's say it's the wife and the children. What do the wife and the children want? They want daddy home, okay, for dinner, for bath time, for bedtime, over weekends, for the little league games. That is what we want. So the love interest can distract the character from their goal. Or in the case of this story where it's a kidnapping, can be the goal. Okay, so his initial goal is, besides being the best banker that he can be, which is his everyday goal, the minute he realizes his fiancée has been kidnapped, his goal is to save the fiancée. Okay, so she becomes the goal. Now, that's the difference between these two, the first example and the second example. So remember yesterday in the first example, our character's goal did not change. Okay. His goal throughout remained, I want to write this book. Through the doubts, the worries, the fears, he wanted to write the book. Through the challenges he had, everything, his goal did not change. In the second example, our goal does change. Okay. So the protagonist wants to be the best banker he can be. Then we have the inciting moment, and then it becomes to rescue the fiancée. Then, once he realizes it's the fiancée who stole the jewels, he wants to recover the jewels. Our goal has changed again. And then when he realizes he has the jewels back, so like, when he digs up the jewels in the pier, he has them. So what now? Is the book over? No, he still wants to get the fiancée. So then the goal changes again. She loves him. She's sorry she did this. Please forgive me. And then he goes, but I'm still going to save her. So then his goal goes from rescue fiancé to figure out who the hell is this fiancé, to recovering the jewels, to again going, I want to rescue the fiancé. Okay. The antagonist is clear in both of these. I think it's the boss demanding his full attention. In the second example, it's the robber who stole the jewels. Both of them have a friend. So in the first example, the friend wasn't very prominent, but in the second example, the IT friend really did a lot. And then the love interest is the fiance who he wants to save. Okay. How are we feeling about our four characters? Are there any questions at this stage? One well-developed character is a lot on his or her own. Yeah, Peter, that's another reason to have fewer characters, is because the fewer characters you have on the page, the more time you spend with them, the more you can round them out. Because otherwise you have these like kind of, I call them the watercolor characters. They're very, very like wishy-washy. They're there, but they don't really have a lot of substance. Whereas we want bright, bold, full-rounded characters who stand there. That's what we want. Okay, so that's very cool. And then if that is what you're referring to, Peter, if you want to elaborate on that, you can tell me more. Okay. My love interest who distracts becomes the friend who helps to achieve the goal. Is it too complicated? So I can have his mum as his love interest. Helen, no, it's fantastic. Fernanda also asked the question, can the friend become the antagonist? Yes. Okay. That is where this gets interesting. Okay, so now I've just told you four characters, and you're kind of like, okay, well, that's going to be a little bit boring. All right. But here's another example for you. So let's say we have this cop. Okay, he's been a cop for years. He's an excellent cop. And they're out to, so my examples are always excessively violent. Please forgive me. I always try to make them less violent, but that's what we have. So my cop is going to catch a serial killer again. Okay. So that's the goal. It's very, very simple. Okay. The protagonist is the cop. The antagonist is the serial killer they're trying to catch. Okay. The friend character is his partner who has been working with him as long as he's been a cop. Okay. So these two guys have been doing the thing. They've been catching many killers. They're very successful. It's great. So protagonist is the cop, friend is the partner, and the antagonist is the serial killer. Usually in a detective novel, they have an estranged wife, estranged adult children, multiple ex-girlfriends as the love interest, because that serves to show me how dedicated the cop is, okay, with this not successful romantic life because he keeps choosing his job. Okay, can you see how I'm very specific about what functions my characters have? Okay, so now we have the cop. Okay, he wants to catch the serial killer and he is doing his best to catch the serial killer, and he's going about it. Now, as the story progresses, he starts realizing something. Every time he starts collecting evidence, and then evidence goes missing, and then they don't find, just like basic things that are in place just aren't in place anymore. And evidence goes missing, funny things start happening. But somewhere during this thing, he starts realizing every time something goes wrong or something bad happens, his partner is either on leave or was like involved. If evidence goes missing, his partner was the last one to have it. If a murder is committed, his partner was not at work that day. So he starts piecing these things together as the story progresses. And then he realizes that his partner has been the serial killer all along. And how did he miss it? So now he's all the self-doubt. He's crazy. This is my best friend. This can't happen. And that is how the friend character turns out to be the antagonist. The friend character can become the love interest. It is the lots of premise for lots of stories. We've been friends forever. We've been friends forever. And then the relationship changes to become romantic. Okay. It doesn't have to be successful. They can decide to listen, I think we're better as friends than we are at this, or they can become the antagonist. Okay. It definitely can. It's not going to, Helen says, with Helen, just give it enough time. Okay. I'd be wary of having too many love interests. Okay. So the function of the love interest is also to show me a softer side of my protagonist. Okay. So, or like in the case of the detective novel, is to show me how dedicated the detective is because he keeps choosing his work over his loved ones. Okay. A love interest, just like your antagonist, does not have to be Does not have to be evil. Your love interest does not have to be sexual or romantic. Okay. It can be a child going, no, mommy, don't go to work. Stay with me today, please. Okay. Whatever that is. It can also be the girlfriend going, oh, don't go for a run today. Stay here. It's warm. Let's snuggle. Okay. So Nerve has asked a very important question. Can humans collectively or climate change be an antagonist, or should it be an individual? Nerve, usually when you go up against a system or something like climate change, it's going to be much easier for you to personify that threat. Okay. Because ultimately, what you want in the end of your story, your antagonist should be able to come face to face with your protagonist. Okay. And they should have a showdown. Whereas, if it's climate change, how hard is it going to be? How are you going to have a showdown with climate change? Okay. How are you going to do this? So, what we do in that case is then you'll start personifying these threats. Okay. So let's say if it is climate change, I would look at who are the biggest threats. What are the biggest threats to climate change? Okay. And let's go take a look and say, for example, it's this really big corporation. So, and how big or how small is the story? So let's say I'm telling a small town story, and then this corporation is constantly threatening the environment. A cool example of this would be if you can remember Julia Roberts, Erin Brockovich. Okay, so that was all about the water being contaminated by this plant. Okay, and this plant denying. So how did she personify that? Because you can't stand in front of a factory and scream at the factory. So we met the lawyers of the plants. I think we met the people who actually work at the plant, or the owners of the company. Okay. And that is who becomes our antagonist. Okay. This panel of lawyers that she has to face. Let's say, for example, you want to go up against a government system. Okay. And you want to say this government is corrupt. I want to fight the government. It's going to be very hard for a character as a little Joe Soap to go straight up to the president and say, "Oh." Okay, so what you do then is you'll find a minion or someone. So this would be a government representative or someone that you can use, or that your character would have access to. Okay, does that start making sense? So for climate change, I would go look if your story is set in a small town or in a city, who are, if it's like an anti-litter campaign, then it would be people littering, but it's a bigger problem like that. Why are they littering? Are there no dustbins? So then you'd have to find the councilman to say why aren't there dustbins? What's going on? Why is there not budget for dustbins? I mean, it's a silly example, but can you see what I'm trying to say, Niv? Is it making sense? Great stuff. Yeah. So try and find someone, be it the lawyer of the company or like kind of the person on the yacht or whatever it is. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. If you can, let's quickly check Peter's question. I have the protagonist and the antagonist, whom is an utter cad. When I developed these two main characters, there were so many possibilities. I had to reduce secondary characters to 5 or so. The secondaries are close to the primaries. I was losing track of the story. Peter, what you do with like a group of secondary characters, for example, what I would recommend is try and amalgamate these characters. So one of the reasons that we work with is like, let's say, for example, you have a group of friends, then it's easier to talk about the friends as opposed to try and create individual personalities for each one of these friends, depending on how important they are to the story and how unique their traits are and stuff. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I hope that's making sense. But try and take even those 5 characters and choose a friend character, at most 2 friend characters. Okay. Let's look at some really big stories. So if we look at Star Wars, you have Luke Skywalker as our protagonist, Vader is our antagonist, Han Solo is the friend character, Leia is the love interest. Now that is a much bigger cast. So what also can happen is your antagonist, for example. So I was using the example of the president, that they want to, do climate, they want to try and encourage climate change, and the president is against it. What you would do in that case is your character would go up against the president's minions, okay? Just like Vader has stormtroopers, Voldemort has Death Eaters, and Sauron has Ring wraiths. Okay, they'll go up against those little minions. So just it's going to be easier if it's smaller. Fantasy is prone to larger casts, but I can promise you your story is going to be stronger the fewer cast you have. Okay, well, the smaller your cast is. All right. My fantasy story has a monstrous cast, but I literally sat down and I forced myself to think about why is this character here? And is there, so my rule of thumb is should I have the character or should I not have the character? Can this character be replaced with an inanimate object? So, if I've spent like 3 pages describing this messenger, should it be could it be replaced with a letter? That would be much simpler. It's going to save me 3 pages of description when I just hand over when a letter arrives, and that's it. Or is this character doing the same function? So if I have a messenger, do I have 6 different messengers or can we have one messenger? Okay, if that's starting to make sense. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. If you can just please identify and list your 4 core characters. If you can't do this at this stage, don't stress about it, but just see if there's something that you can start playing with. Okay, I'm going to set the timer again for 3 minutes. I will see you on the other side. I keep opening my my calculator to set a timer. Okay, 3 minutes, you're on the clock. Okay, thank you, writers. You can finish up for me. I'm hoping you'll be able to do that. Um, Chrissy has asked, what about a kingdom or an empire where you need to explain hierarchy and how every character fits into the system with families? Okay, So, Chrissy, I'm assuming, are you writing fantasy, or historical fiction? Because what that is going to give you an indication as well. But when it comes to things like fantasy, where we obviously have large casts and we have to do all of this world building, that is one of the reasons why, with fantasy, we have a slightly larger word count. So most fiction for beginner authors comes in around 80,000 words. Fantasy comes is allowed to go up to about 120,000 for a beginner writer. I'm still going to encourage you to keep it under 100 because otherwise you're just overwriting. But that is part of the challenge with writing fantasy, or stories like this, is that you need to build this world, and that's part of the art. So what I would do first of all is, you do have more characters, but just be careful of not doing too much world building and too much explaining, because that is something that tends to happen. But I'd go look at books that do it really, really well. So it's a book we spoke about in the class last night. I think it's called Red Rising. It is a science fiction book, and it has there's a huge hierarchy there. It's very, very interesting how they build the world and stuff. But ultimately, you want to show as much as possible. So you want me to experience this world and learn where my character's place is in the world. I'm just trying to think of some more fantasy examples of who they are and where they'd fit in. But I would go look at stories. But yes, you will have more characters in a fantasy novel, but your main plot line is still going to revolve around those four core characters. Okay. And then you're going to interrogate every single character. Why are you here and what are you doing? When you look at something like the hero's journey, which is often used for fantasy, and it might be a really nice thing for you to take a look at, is that we use all kinds of different characters. They have a mentor. So in something like a mentor character, and there's a wise one. So the mentor character is something like a Yoda character, a Haymitch in Hunger Games, or a who else is a mentor? Snape in Harry Potter. So these are all characters that will help train the protagonist. Then you can have characters like shapeshifters. So if you are writing fantasy, often shapeshifters are vampires and werewolves who physically can change shape. Whereas in a modern day story, it could be something like a psychopath because they present one thing, one face to the world and something else to the rest. Okay. Um, that is how, so can you just see every time if this character is this, this is what they do. If this character is this is what they do. You have to be able to tell me what the function of each character is. Okay. So that's just very important with that. Okay. Leah says, I have three main characters, each with their own story, and one main character. Great, Chrissy. The one main character introduces us to the other two. I'm struggling to write details of each story. I fear I get to the point too quick, realistic literary fiction. Okay, so Leah, when you say you get to the point too quickly, I'm assuming you're referring to yourself. You were talking about something we call an underwriter. So you're either an underwriter or an overwriter. So what would happen is I'm an extreme underwriter. I come from advertising. I trained as a copywriter. What other people do in 80,000 words, I can finish the whole story in 35,000 words. Okay. The opposite of that is an overwriter. So for them, something like NaNoWriMo is easy. I mean, they hit 50,000 words in 4 days. But they have too much and they have to learn to cut. As underwriters, we have to learn what we left out and what we need to add in. I, for example, leave out setting and description. So I have learned over the years to pay attention to my setting and description and to make sure that I go back and add that in. Okay. So that is just something what I would do, what I usually do with the beginning. Well, that's one of the reasons we use word counts for 52 scenes. So we submit 1,300 to 1,600 words a day or a week. And that is, it helps the underwriters to have a long enough story, and it helps the overwriters to trim their story as we go. Okay. So those are advantages. It's something that you have to learn to fix. Okay. Neither one is perfect. Neither one is ideal, or it's easier than the other. Overwriters think underwriters have it easy, and underwriters think overwriters have it easy. They both have their challenges. So that's something that you have to get through, that we have to learn. Okay. About three main characters and literary fiction. So it is difficult. I don't know how experienced you are on this adventure, Leah, if it's your first book or if you've written multiple books. But writing three storylines is a trick or is difficult. If you look at someone like Marian Keyes, she does it quite often with these multiple storylines of these women that interchange. Something like Game of Thrones has multiple storylines. It's a monstrous story. It's huge. So where you can see on the first draft checklist, we have one line. Those stories will all have three lines, but they all move towards one central point. So usually the thing that unites these three storylines or three characters is the pursuit of the single goal. In Game of Thrones, it is the pursuit of the Iron Throne. They all want the Iron Throne. Even something like Lord of the Rings, which is a very big story, which brings multiple characters along. It is all in pursuit of the ring. Okay. So you can so if you're saying one main character introduces us to the other two, do they each have their own goal? Do they each have their own, are they completely separate stories? Are these three people living in the same place? So what also can happen is you can have multiple storylines or dual storylines or dual timelines where you'll have a past story and a present story and another past story. So there are many ways to bring it all together. Just be gentle with yourself. It's not easy writing three stories, but you'd have to make them decide how intertwined they are. What also happens with those three main characters is they'll change roles. So if you're in this character's viewpoint, the other character will take, the previous protagonist will take on the role of the friend character or the role of the antagonist, and vice versa. But what is the relationship between the three characters? That's something that I would like to know. How are they known or jointed, or how they're together? Okay. Ariel asks, how do you narrow down the antagonist if you have many? Also, the protagonist's goals change as new information is revealed, which changes the real antagonist, like from minions to big boss behind the plot. Ariel, what are you writing? What genre are you writing in? Are you writing memoir? Because in memoir, that can sometimes happen. But most of the time, the minions are going to do the bidding of the antagonist. So the antagonist is going to stay, the antagonist or the big boss, as you call him, they're going to stay as the antagonist. So there's only one antagonist and they do the bidding. So that's where the minions come in. That is where, for example, we have Sauron, I can never remember it's Saruman, it's Sauron, who is the eye in the sky in Mordor, and he's all powerful, but he can't really get up and walk. So he has orcs to do his bidding. He has ring wraiths to do his bidding, and they all add to the conflict and add different kinds of stress and tension to the story. Okay. So how do you narrow? Okay. Also the protagonist goals. Okay. The goal will change. That's completely fine. So remember what I said in the previous example is the banker's goal changed from getting the fiance back to finding out who the fiance is, to getting the jewels back, to rescuing the fiance again. But the antagonist should remain the same. If it is a completely different story every time, you might be writing more than one book inside of, or like you might be writing three books inside one book. So always go back to your story goal. What is the story goal and what is it that the character wants to achieve? If it is a kidnapping story, for example, and my goal is to find the loved one, find the loved one, find the loved one. And let's say the loved one dies. They're killed by the kidnappers. Sorry, excessive violence again. They're killed by the kidnappers. Then the goal will change from finding the loved one to revenge. Okay. And then it becomes a revenge story. So if you're doing stuff like that, as long as it's still related to the main storyline and not a completely new story you're introducing, you should be cool. Okay. Colin says, my antagonist becomes a friend temporarily and grudgingly who helps the protagonist along with a bunch of secondary characters to save the love interest. That's interesting. So usually it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Why do they unite? What is it that makes them work together? They should still have opposing goals. So if it is to save the love interest is the temporary goal, what is the larger goal? So we've saved the love interest because the love interest is the one with the secret that is going to help us unlock the chamber, and then we're going to be fighting again to be the crown or the ascended one or whatever that is. Okay. So just think about that. But I mean, the antagonist, like enemies to lovers, is a very, very popular trope in romance and fantasy, and they're fantastic. So, you can, for example, have the antagonist, they're forced proximity, they have to work together, and then they learn to get to know each other. But that's usually when they're up against a bigger, badder antagonist. I don't know if that's happening, Colin. You can tell me some more. Um, John says, how do you feel about characters in the first person? Each character takes a chapter to tell us their version of the story. The antagonist will not be telling the truth. I love first person executions. Other people hate first person executions. It's hard to predict. Viewpoint, there's no right or wrong. They all have pros and cons. That's the only thing that you can do with viewpoint, because with a first person telling, you narrow the scope of your story, which is actually helpful in the title. So, for example, if your antagonist is going to be an unreliable narrator, it's really going to help you to keep the secrets. Whereas if everyone knows everything and we're in this omniscient viewpoint, it's very hard to keep secrets. So I think it's really cool. Go for it. See how it works out. Just make sure the only thing I caution against here is not to have too many viewpoint characters. Okay, in a novel of 80,000 words, I always recommend about 2 to 3 characters. But why would you need more? Just go think about that. Okay. Cool, Zoya. I'm so happy to hear this. Okay, Ariel's writing sci-fi mystery, and let me just go back to your question to double check. Yeah, so with the sci-fi, go read Red Rising. It's my favorite sci-fi book in the world. Um, and then go and you'll see how, okay, so what you also have to know, so besides minions, you'll also get a character called the bully. Okay. And this is where the hero's journey may help you. So go look at the different kinds of characters your character can. When we do in the workbook, if you sign up for 52 scenes, there is a specific link to the other characters, and then I'll explain who the other characters are. But you get a character like the bully. So I'm going to use Harry Potter as an example. I know not everyone's very fond of that at this point, but it is just a very big story that everyone knows. So it's sometimes just easiest to find common ground. It is sci-fi mystery. Then the bully character. Okay. So Voldemort is it Voldemort? Yes. Voldemort is, the antagonist. He's the baddie. But then he has the Death Eaters. The Death Eaters are the ones who do his bidding out in the world. They're up and running, they're doing their thing. Then you have something like the Dementors. The Dementors are still doing the bidding of Voldemort, but they terrorize the characters in a different way. Then you have a character like the bully, which is Draco Malfoy. He is just making Harry's life as difficult as possible. Okay, so can you see how they're not the antagonist, but they all add to the conflict in the story? Okay, that's saying please do not go on a character fest and just add characters for the sake of adding character. Okay. Zoya says, I am writing a rock star romance, and my main problem is shaping and fleshing out my characters. This morning is so helpful already. Yeah, Zoya, I don't know how much plotting you do, but I'm not a plotter. I figure out my story as I go along. And one of the main things that I figure out is to get to know these characters. The more time I spend with them, the more I have them on the page, the more I see how they react, because we pretend we're in charge. We're not, the characters are in charge. The more I see how they react and how I get to know them, the stronger my sense of character becomes. Okay, very cool. All right. Now, I hope you were able to list your 4 characters. And here we go. All right. So okay, so now we have our 4 core characters. So remember, 1 story goal, 2 sources of conflict, 3 acts that we divide into 4 quarters, 4 characters that we use to tell our core story. And then we get to number 5. Okay, so remember when we spoke about the story goal changing? The goals change in specific places, okay, because we also don't want to give our readers whiplash. Okay, goal 1, goal 2, goal 1, goal 2, goal 1, goal 2. We want to, it's going to happen gradually. So there are specific places where we can change the story goal, okay? And that happens at the end of quarter 1, in the middle of the middle, and at the end of quarter 2. So remember when I said, so that's basically the end of Act 1, the middle of Act 2, and the end of Act 2. Those are 3 pivotal scenes in our story. Okay, so let's quickly take a look. what you should have is by now, I'm hoping you have a good idea where you have, like, let's say 20 to 25 scenes roughly that you can brainstorm. Okay. But when we talk about 20 to 25 scenes, we write up until 50 to 60 scenes in most novels. Okay. So that's a lot. So I'll start with the bare minimum and then I have to brainstorm everything. This is one big brainstorming exercise. People think, oh, plot, plot, plot. It's not plotting, it's just big ass brainstorming. That's what you need to do. Okay. So in these 20 to 25 scenes, which I hope through your conflict list, through the kinds of characters you're introducing, with your inciting moment, you should have, a little skeleton of story of possible scenes that you can write. Okay. But the 5 main scenes that you're going to anchor your story with are very, very important. I'm using 5 for this example, okay, because we're using a 3-act structure. Some stories are just longer. So I have writers who write with me over 2 years, and they'll, for example, write to a 7-act structure or something, and then we've kind of shuffled these things a lot. So they'll have a few more surprises depending on the length of the story. Longer stories may need more, shorter stories need fewer. We write about 77,000 words for 52 scenes, so 5 is good for us. Each quarter is divided by one of these scenes, and these are our major plot points. The first one that starts our story is the inciting moment. You should have that. Okay, then we have the first, second, and third surprises. Okay, so the surprises are what we call the plot points. They happen after the first quarter, in the middle, and at the end of the third quarter. And then we re-evaluate the story goal in these big scenes. Okay, so I need you to think big decisions your characters have to make, location changes, big reveals, secrets, surprises. In the examples, this is what we had to identify. Okay, so where he learns, so obviously the inciting moment is the robbery. Then he learns that the emeralds are fake, for example. That's a plot point 1. Plot point 2 is where he learns that, after that, he learns that his girlfriend is the robber. He's been the subject of a con. And halfway through, he realizes that she still loves him. He wants to go save her. Okay. Then plot point 3 is where he implements his plan and he tries to figure out how to go save her. And then in plot point 4, he needs to make a decision. Is he going to the police? Is he going to save the girlfriend? What is he going to do? And that propels us into the fourth quarter again. Okay. So, I mean, give or take a few, but see how that would go. But big, big, big decisions. Okay. So that brings us to the ending of the story. Now, a lot of people have questions about the beginning. Where must I start? What must I do here? My advice to you always is just write it. Okay. Get it on the page, and a mantra I chant through the year to my students the whole time. I think if this weren't a Zoom class, I'd be punched when I say it again, is make notes, not changes. I don't want you going back and rewriting your first 3 chapters, your first 5 chapters, because you're going to keep rewriting it, but it's something that's going to change. Because I cannot tell you the amazing amount of clarity it gives you to get to the end of your story. And that is my goal for you. I need you to get to the end of the book, because the minute you've written the end and you know what happens, you understand immediately what you need in the beginning of your story. Okay. So the ending is so important. My goal is to get you to the end. Okay. And I'm going to tell you, make notes, not changes, make notes, not changes. Okay. Because when we get to the ending of the story, we realize you're going to do things. And this is the magic of writing. I can't explain it to you, but you're going to do something in scene 13 that you have no clue why you're doing it. It's just there. You're on deadline. It's strange. It's happening. You go, okay, it's there. Then when you're writing the end of your story and you get to roughly like scene 47 and you're like, ugh, something is not clicking. Then you go, oh, I did it in scene 13. It clicks and there's your ending. Okay. It's the magic of this process. I can't take credit for it, but if you show up, it's going to happen. I promise. Okay. So here is our 5th scene. It's very, very simple. People panic about the ending of stories, but you only have 3 options. Okay. Your character either achieves the goal, or they fail to achieve the goal, or we don't know if they achieve the goal. Okay, it's as simple as that. All right. The character achieves the goal, they fail to achieve the goal, or we don't know if they achieve the goal. Okay, So during these scenes, what you're going to do here as well, okay, is every time when you get to the first, second, and third surprises. So let me go back to my picture from yesterday. Where's my picture? Picture. This one, okay? So every time you get here, your inciting moment gives me the goal. When I get to plot point one, I'm going to go, is my goal going to stay the same? Do I still want to rescue the loved one, or is my goal going to change? Um, Yes, I still want to rescue the loved one. Then I get to the midpoint. Okay. Is my goal going to change, but it's going to stay the same? So at this plot point, is my goal still to rescue the loved one, or is my goal to, or is it going to change? Okay. The loved one was accidentally killed by the bad guys. So now my goal changes to revenge. Okay. Third quarter, my goal is get revenge on these bad guys. Okay. I get to plot point three. They've eluded me, they've escaped me, so my goal is still revenge. Okay, until I get to the end of my story, my goal is going to be revenge. And then when I get to the ending, I'm going to have this epiphany and I'm going to realize it's not going to bring my loved one back. It's terrible. What am I going to do? And then the ending is, did the character achieve the goal or not? So the original goal was to get the loved one back. No, they cannot achieve the goal. So then the goal was to get revenge. Do they get revenge when they're face to face with this kidnapper? What is it that they're going to do? Okay, and your character, now this is where we shade and color it in. Okay, so let me go back. Where's my slide? Um, when we get here, so the character achieves the goal. So yes, they can shoot the kidnapper and they can get revenge. Or they can fail to achieve the goal. They choose not to shoot the kidnapper. Or you can have, I don't know if they achieved, if they did it or not. If you have an ambiguous ending, I'm warning you, ambiguous endings are not as easy as they seem. Okay. Seems to be very tempting to go dot, 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 but those tend to be cop-outs and readers do not like them. There are very few books with successful ambiguous endings. One of the more recent ones is there's a Marisha Preschel wrote Night Film. It's an old book, but that had an ambiguous ending, which I thought was interesting. I kind of wanted something else, but that. And then Paper Palace by Miranda, someone Crowley, I think. I can't remember her name exactly, had an ambiguous ending, but I think that was very well done. Okay, so be careful of ambiguous endings. But let's quickly go back to achieve the goal or fail to achieve the goal. If your character achieves the goal, you can shade that. You can make it with a moral loss or a moral gain. So if your character achieves the goal and they kill the kidnappers, that's going to be with a moral loss because now they're a killer and a baddie too. If your character fails to achieve the goal, meaning they choose not to kill the kidnappers, okay, they will fail to achieve the goal, but at a moral gain. Okay, they made the right decision, we can say. All right. Another example would be, let's go back to our detective, where our detective finally catches the serial killer. He has a choice. He's either going to save the victim or he is going to catch the killer. Now he's in the room. He has a choice. He can either stop the bleeding and save the serial killer, or he can chase after the serial killer and catch the serial killer, but he can't do both. Okay. So if he chooses to catch the serial killer, he achieves the story goal, but at a moral loss. If he chooses to save the victim, he's going to fail at his story goal because the killer's going to escape, but it's at a moral gain because he saved the victim. Okay. So keep your endings very, very simple. Character achieves the goal, character fails to achieve the goal, and then decide if it's a moral loss or a moral gain. Okay. Now, this is one of the things that I have an inkling of when I start writing, but a lot changes. My last novel, the novel that I'm currently working on, around scene 39, I realized what had to happen and my ending changed completely. Okay. So I have an idea of where I'm going, but I'm always open to make changes. Okay. So let's recap. We look at the big picture that will help you get the outline. Okay, we look at the big picture, and that is what we have here. Okay, you should have a big outline of what a big picture outline of what is happening in your story. Okay, so if you start with a goal, if you have an idea of your two kinds of conflicts. Now, the inner conflict, as I said, the more I get to know my character, the more sure I become of the inner conflict. The outer conflict to me tends to be easier. Then we have our 3 acts, we have our 4 core characters, and we have our 5 plot points. Okay, that will give you the outline for a story. Once you have that, you will fill in the rest by either writing or planning and then writing. Okay. If you can, I'm going to give you 3 minutes again. And if you can please try and just inciting moment, character steals bread, gets arrested. What is your surprise? One, surprise two, surprise three, and the end. Don't panic if you can't do it yet. It's not a problem. I definitely don't have these when I start. But I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Just pencil down a few of these ideas. You're on the clock. Okay, you can finish your last sentence, writers. I'm hoping you can do some kind of at least some of this. Okay, so Peter has asked, I'm wondering if I should extend my novel to a continuous of the story. I'm so enjoying this challenge. However, I do not want to get beyond myself. Um, I understand, get the first draft down. However, the story keeps growing and I see the story beyond one novel. I have material for a series. Am I getting beyond myself? Peter, it really depends on how experienced you are. So, I mean, if you've been doing this for yonks and forever, I mean, let rip and do what you want. But I'm a huge proponent in getting the first story down and then make as many notes as you can. So, what you can do is when these scenes pop up to you, because it does help to know where you're going, is to start planning the story going ahead. So I would almost like buy a separate notebook. And because, well, I mean, I don't need a lot of encouragement to buy a notebook, but it's always fun for me. I'd get a notebook and I'd go notes for book two. And then I would go every time I have a scene idea for that, I'd start writing it down because it will help you to understand what this character needs to go through and where they need to go in terms of this. So I don't think it's a bad idea for you to just start thinking about the book as a series. We do talk a little bit about when we get going. We have specific classes regarding the stories, how to extend them. If it was a series, where you'd have to go. Okay, so that is something that we jump into. Okay, so very cool. I hope you could all list all of these things. And then I'm just quickly going to tell you a little bit more about the challenge and all the fun things that we get up to, because I really hope you'll join us. So here's what you need to know. In the interest of full disclosure, I usually have the inciting moment and maybe the first surprise and sometimes a vague idea of the end. Maybe. And that is how I start. But I use this as a roadmap to get me through it. The more time I spend with my characters, the clearer the story becomes. Throughout the year, we stop and go back to the plotting and discuss what can or should happen in the next scenes. The monthly classes help to cement this theory. I am going to stop here. It is a lot. Please breathe. I know it feels very overwhelming and a lot to get your head around, and that's why we don't do it alone. We write together literally every Sunday, and the group coaching happens weekly. So you'll have classes like this. Well, not a formal class like this, but you can ask me any of this stuff any other time during the week. Okay. My character did this, I don't know what to do, and we solve that on the day. Okay, so you can ask me anything about this in any week. I give you advice on where you are in your story. So, guys, it takes time for us to wrangle this idea into a semblance of control. I think that is why I hate writing montages in movies. You know, those scenes where the writer sits with a beautiful old typewriter and the pages pile up. Someone brings them toasted tea in appropriate intervals. Seems idyllic and so easy, right? Well, that is not what my writing time is like. I need more help. So, you should have these 5 sections of your story. I also love that movie, Fernanda. It's one of my favorites. Now that you have these 5 seconds of your book, how much of an effect will a plan like this have on your success? So I'm quickly going to give you some examples of what some of my writers have said who've successfully completed the challenge. So Elizabeth said, this has been the most consistent I've been with my writing ever, and that includes when I was working on my MFA. The ideas morphed throughout the year, shaped by the prompts and by the feedback, and it's changed for the better. Sean says, this process has worked so well for me. I was able to take a wackadoo short story, the second 12 short story prompt I did, and turn it into a book-length tale. The weekly pacing was just right, and a lot of my fears around getting started with a blank page each session, while not gone, were at least shown to be just that, fears. So if you've been taking notes and doing the exercises, you're starting to see the possibilities of this process. Maybe you're even wondering if you have been approaching it all wrong in the past or seeing where you got lost in previous drafts. I hope you're thinking about how else you can improve your story idea and finally find the time to write, especially when procrastination kicks in, because that is the next problem, just like the writer in our example. How do you kick procrastination butt and make your writing dreams come true? So remember what I said, the theory is one thing. The theory is almost, I mean, you can Google any theory and find it anywhere online, but the value of the challenge really comes in with mind over manuscript thinking. So remember I said there were 2 parts to writing a book. There's the theory that we discussed, the big picture stuff of plotting, and then the other part is the mind over manuscript thinking. The theory seems doable, and I hope you're able to apply it to your story, but we're at the part where the proof is in the pudding. So planning your book is as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but beating procrastination and self-doubt requires a system, and that is why we couple this theory with the PDF method. By doing this, you'll have a book by the end of the year because you need more than just theory. So let's quickly look at the PDF method again. So most of you have been around the 12 short stories challenge or the 12 poems challenge, and we know how this works. But the PDF method is the most effective way to complete a novel and beat procrastination and self-doubt. I give you a prompt every week. Okay, so our first prompt is published on the 31st of December. Your first scene is due on the 7th of January. The prompts are entirely optional. Okay, you do not have to use them. The prompts are there to get you started, and they're a great way to create magic in your stories. I loved the prompts. I would write my scene and then I'd say, oh, what's the prompt for today? Or I'd go, eek, no scene idea. I'd look at the prompt and then something would come out of that. Okay. Then, of course, 7 days later, you have your deadline. So you've written your scene. 7 days later, you have your deadline. Deadlines are the fastest way to fill a blank page. I promise you. I cannot tell you how many Sundays The writers rock up for the writing session going, I have no idea what to write. I literally have no clue. We start that timer, they sit down, and then they have a scene by the end of the hour. Okay. Not a completed scene, it needs some work, but there's a scene. Okay. So showing up to the page, putting your butt in the chair, that's what we need to do. And then, of course, kind feedback is the most effective way to help a writer grow and improve. One of the classes that we're going to do very early in the year is how to give feedback on someone's novel and how to comment for the longest time, because kindness is something that I harp on, and this challenge is no different. But we do want valuable feedback. And I promise you, the writers that you write with who write your story become your biggest fans. Okay. I've been there this week where I'm kind of like, oh, I can't do this. I have nothing. It's my readers who go, Mia, I want to know what Nell's doing. Let's see, what is she up to this week? And then it's like, okay, let's go do this again. So the feedback, the camaraderie, the working together is really, really very powerful. Now, great books don't fall from the sky ready for publication. They're written by writers just like you who show up to the page every week despite the fear, worries, and time constraints. Every great book has these 5 pivotal scenes, these 4 core characters, these 3 parts, a beginning, a middle, and end, 2 sources of conflict, and a story goal. Each section is important to the structure of your book. If you leave these out, you will make it so much harder for yourself. But that is not what we have to worry about. So what about the procrastination and the self-doubt? So here are some of the benefits of 52 scenes. So writing your book this way gives you both the control and safety of plotting, but also that sense of adventure and opportunity for discovery that just writing gives you. So what benefits are, you have an automatic routine. We write together weekly. The theory, monthly classes to remind you of the theory and help you plot as the story develops. No big information dump. I'm experienced enough as a coach to know when you need which classes. And that is why I have specific classes at specific times of the year where you are in your story. So it's not this information overwhelm where you have to try and absorb everything in the first month. The regular deadlines, you submit weekly, which is great for habit forming. I cannot tell you how valuable that is. You have support from me, a writing coach with more than 14 years of experience, and your fellow writers who have the same goal as you. Guys, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. So if you want to be there with people who are doing the thing, be with people who are doing the thing. Ideas for when you get stuck and stumped, and you will get stuck, but we're here to help you. I think that's the greatest advantage. I don't know what to do. I'm struggling with my story. This is so hard. I give advice. Your fellow writers give advice. The people reading your story going, no, I was wondering about this, or have you forgotten about this? Okay. It helps you to overcome self-doubt. As your word count grows, you give the critic irrefutable evidence that you can do this. You learn to trust yourself and your story. I promise you, this is the biggest benefit that comes out of this, is every week you post, you're telling the critic, screw you, I'm doing this, because that critic is loud and that critic keeps going. Okay. And then a huge benefit to me is we write at a slower pace. So this gives you time to think about your story and improve your writing and still live your life, because we want to live our lives. Okay. So if you're finally ready to show up to the page and trust your story enough so that you can finish your book, I'm here, ready and waiting to help you. This is my simple deadline-driven system for finishing novels. Weekly deadlines, coaching sessions and writing sessions, monthly theory classes, and a monstrous 81-page workbook full of theory. Can I do this on my own? Yes, of course you can. But given that you're here and still asking questions means you haven't succeeded on your own. The community, the feedback, and the deadlines will help you finish your book and change the way you write forever. My writers come back to do it again and again and again. So let's see what it looks like inside the challenge. The first thing you'll have access to once you sign up is the workbook. So this workbook is a big document. A lot of these pages that you've seen throughout the presentation are pages out of the workbook. It is a PDF document. You can print as many of the templates as you need so that you can use them as much as you want. So this is prep your plot. These are the other characters that you have. This was my favorite. This is my favorite plotting tool of all time. How to do action scenes, how to do reaction scenes. We do scene classes at the beginning of the year. We do the how to give feedback for novels classes at the beginning of the year. It's quite busy. Then, of course, we have the weekly writing sessions. So we start with a little coaching session. It's 15 to 30 minutes. And then we just check in. I answer your coaching questions. Mia, what did you say about the friend character again? I was wondering about this in my story. We have a discussion. And then the timer looks like this. I set the timer for 60 minutes and we all write together. And then we continue our discussion at the end of the 60 minutes. Okay. Most writers finish the bulk of their scene in that hour. We have monthly theory classes. So these are some of the topics that, as you can see, I showed you yesterday. It's the beginning class, the middle of the middle, or the plotting the middle class, the middle of the middle class, and the end class. These are intensive plotting classes. So where this class has discussed the overview of the book, each one of these classes discuss the very specific quarter of what needs to happen in scenes 1 to 13, scenes 13 to 26, scenes 26 to 39, and then again 39 to 52. So you're guided throughout this process throughout. We have dialogue classes, we have viewpoint class, we have character classes, show don't tell class. It's really fun, okay? And then our final class is the rewrite and publish class. How to go about it, what do you want to do? Are you ready to rewrite? Are you ready to publish? Okay. So monthly theory classes, all recorded, and they live there for the year so that you can take a look. So remember what I said about the critic and the self-doubt and the seeing your word count grow is your profile on 52 scenes and on Deadlines for Writers, all your scenes go and sit there. And every time you look at that list of that scene growing, you go from scene 1 to scene 10 to scene 20 to 30. You give that critic proof where you're telling your critic, I am doing this. Okay. Whereas it feels weird to say it's on your profile on the site. It's just somewhere where it's sitting and it becomes a living, tangible thing. Whereas, if you do it on your own, it's quite often to lose track of these things and to not pay close attention. So this is really one of the best ways that I've come across that we can challenge that self-doubt and change our critic's point of view. Okay. 2 more of our little testimonials. This is what Amanda said. I can't believe I'm 5 scenes away from finishing. Like you said at the beginning, trust the process. And my goodness, how right you were. I started my book with a skeletal plan and my characters have changed the whole trajectory. I've tried to write a book many times, but this is the first time I've fallen in love with all my characters. This is due to your teaching and guidance. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom of novel writing. And I said, I cannot tell you how wonderful and supportive 52 Scenes has been for me. I've always admired those who did the challenge and never thought I'd be one of them someday. Week by week, easier in the beginning and middle, crushingly difficult during the last quarter, I managed to stay head above water and build my story to the current 60,000 words. 60K words and counting. Attending the weekly check-ins and writing sessions have played a crucial role in accomplishing this mammoth task and feeling inclusive of a writing community. What a valuable investment it's turned out to be. So when we give feedback, obviously what you'll start doing is in the beginning, I encourage you to read as many stories as you can on the site. That first month, I say just go and read as many as you can. You're going to see, I like this story. I don't like this genre. This is a bit dark for me. I don't like romance. And then you kind of figure out who your writing partners are. And you will start making writing friends, literally. And I don't say they might not be your first fans, but they're certainly going to be your biggest fans. So that feedback is really, really valuable for you while you're writing. You'll make friends and kind of read the same book throughout the year. So they'll read yours and you read theirs. And some writers, you only have to read 2. That is the minimum reading requirement. But most writers read like 5 or 6. And it's this like whole gang of people giving and receiving feedback from each other. So it's really, really valuable. Darren popped onto Facebook and said, anyone who ever started or meant to start a book needs this. My manuscript is on its 2nd revision, thanks to 52 Scenes and Mia. It took 1 year to finish a novel that's been at least 10 years in the making. Highly recommend. So the investment is $479. It includes the workbook, the 52 online writing sessions, the 52 live online group coaching, the 13 theory lessons presented live, and recordings of those lessons to access wherever you need. Of course, time zone permitting, you can make it 104 live on writing sessions and 104 online group coachings, and 26 theory lessons. So a lot of the writers who can attend the morning and the evening sessions or just the one session. Then, of course, there are writers who don't attend any of those. That's the fun part about the challenge. Nothing is compulsory. If the thought of weekly Zooms is overwhelming for you, Many of my writers, I receive an email from them in the beginning to say they've signed up, and I receive an email at the end to say they're done. I don't see them during the rest of the year. They don't contact me, they don't need me, and they carry on. So you can really decide for yourself how much of this challenge you need. Okay. Payments, we do payments, international payments via PayPal. Credit card option is also available via PayPal. However, if you want to do the payment plan, you are going to have to sign up for a PayPal account. Unfortunately, it's the only way I can do payment plans at the moment. If you do pay in full, you can pay once off with your credit card and you don't need a PayPal account. South African writers can contact me to pay via PayFast. I just have to set that up for you. And then we have payment plans for 3, 6, or 12 months. Okay. But there is more. Just a note about payment plans. Please don't be embarrassed to use a payment plan or to ask me for a payment plan. I paid for most of my courses using payment plans. Okay, so please, that is why I have them, because I want to help as many writers as possible. And I know how challenging it can be sometimes. Okay, very important. We do not do refunds. This is a digital product. Given the nature of digital products, it's not something that is returnable. I'm there every week. I'm helping you post. I'm coaching. I'm doing the thing. I need you to be very, very sure of your decision. Another reason is no refunds means added accountability. My coach always tells me, Mia, the transformation is in the transaction. So, and the same goes for this. When we put skin in the game, that's when we get serious about our stuff. Okay. Please, you have until 7th January to accept this offer. Or to join the challenge. Take the time to think about this. I need you to be sure. Okay. I know you can do this. You need to believe it too. But there is still more. This challenge also includes the weekly deadlines, because deadlines make procrastination disappear and stories appear. Weekly coaching sessions, because we all need help and advice from a professional along the way. Weekly writing sessions, because it's better together and you'll start your week with at least half your scene done. Monthly theory classes that help you plot and plan as you write without overwhelming you with a ton of information all at once, and the epic 81-page workbook at your fingerprints with printable templates and easy to understand theory to help you so much more. Then, of course, we have bonus classes. Tracy Skuse is a colleague of mine. She has taught a memoir class for us, which is fantastic. It lives under the bonus sections. Bonus classes sections, there is the subplot class, which is a really cool class about how to use subplots and how to manipulate them. Then we have the Viewpoint series. My writing colleague, Anthony Ehlers, I want to call him a viewpoint specialist. He is incredibly good at viewpoint, and he explains it beautifully. It's really, really very insightful. So Anthony comes once a year to teach a viewpoint class for us. And these have built up, it's lesson 1, 2, and 3. So we've got a little viewpoint series at the moment, which is included as bonus classes for you as part of the challenge. And then those of you who did the 30 Days of Plotting Challenge will know these videos quite well. But what I did so this is a long class, okay? So now you want to remember, what did Mia say about the friend character? And now you're sitting here trawling through a 60-minute class trying to figure out what Mia said about the friend character. So what I did, I call these bite-sized plotting. So I made little videos. They are between 30 seconds and 3 minutes. And you can literally go, what did Mia say about the protagonist? What did Mia say about the scene numbers? What did Mia say about the setting? And you click on that video, you very quickly just remind yourself of the theory, and then you can go carry on. Okay, so you don't have to sit through an hour class every time to remember what I said. Okay. We also have silent sessions. So on Sunday, we have the coaching sessions, and then we chat and we talk and we spend time together, and we get that it's not just me feeling, it's great. But on a Tuesday, we have something called the silent session. So on Sunday, you will write your scene in the group coaching session and the writing session. And then that following Tuesday at the same time, we'll meet again. And then it's called a silent session. And then it's supposed to say no cameras. I owe you an A. We have silent sessions. That means there's no cameras, no mics. We just log into the Zoom meeting. I put up the timer and we just write. Okay. That is on a Tuesday, and then on a Wednesday we submit. Okay, so you have 2 booked hours to write your scene before the deadline on a Wednesday. Some writers write in the one session and do the reading in the other session. Okay. I've been teaching writing courses for more than 14 years, but I've always wanted to offer more. I know writers need support over a longer period. Changing your writing takes time. You need to figure out the novel writing process. Changing the way you think about novel writing is the best way to finally finish a book. It doesn't have to be lonely. It doesn't have to be a struggle. What happens when you write without 52 scenes? Most likely nothing will change. You'll keep trying until eventually you give up or you may finish, but chances are you wouldn't be here if you could do this on your own. I know how you feel, writer. It's a big decision. It's a big commitment. I did this challenge for the first time in 2021, and I remember how overwhelming the thought of such a big task was, but we built it down. We broke it down. We made it manageable. We built routines. It was a way to write that still allowed me to do my work, spend my time with my family, and write my story. And throughout this all, I'm only an email away. So let's quickly, last little bit, see what our other writers had to say. Audrey said, definitely consider joining 52 Scenes in 2026. You might think that you can do it on your own, and you probably can, but having the privilege of being part of a bigger group with a shared goal is very supportive of you finishing the novel. The group keeps you accountable, and having to post 6,000 words per week slows down the process sufficiently to be able to plan better and hopefully produce a better first draft. Then there is also the magic of meeting people you would never have met, and that brings so much depth and synchronicities to the table. Well worth the effort. Mia is also excellent regarding coaching and supporting aspirant writers. David said, this is a fantastic idea. I've been thinking about my story for at least 20 years, but might never, probably wouldn't have done anything about it. Not that the world is the less for it, but I would have regretted it. Thank you for this great challenge and all your help along the way. Along with the classes, though, I think the feedback is an extremely valuable part of the experience. Mackenzie said, I've been to 2 literary events recently, and I have to say the writers community and the 52 Scenes and 52 Weeks program you've created through Deadlines for Writers is truly remarkable. The more I've been getting involved in local writing events, the more I've come to realize how special and effective your programs are. Thank you so much for teaching me how to write and structure a novel, providing a structure that taught me how to be consistent, disciplined, and enough to complete the entire manuscript. I couldn't have made it this far without you and your programs. And then I'm not going to read those 2. I'm going to read the last one. This is Michael's testimonial, which I absolutely love. I can't say it enough. If you're serious about writing a book, tired of talking about it, tired of thinking about it and failing, and then dealing with the guilt of knowing you can do this, but just how? This is the how. Consistent effort each week produces incredible results. There's a clever saying about eating an elephant. I started this challenge thinking that a year was a long time to get it done, far away from where I was, but then also looked back at the last 5 years of wanting to write a book and not having done anything towards it. Now the year is almost done. It went past in a stuttering blink, really. A flash of life's everything else, work, family, and even watching Netflix shows. But now I've got something I didn't have before. I often open my precious Word document, one of the most backed up files I've ever owned, just to look at the word total, to marvel at how far it's come. 65,750 today, and when I'm done, it'll be 78,000. Think about that for a second. Now look at your own projects, the false starts, the wishes, and the dreams. I know because I've been there, done that. So reading this post, you can be motivated knowing that if I can get it done, a classic procrastinating, lazy, easily distracted human, then anyone can. Or you can keep putting it off, making excuses, wondering if you have what it takes. Looking at your half done, just started, gave up manuscripts, and then wishing that if only just. I keep saying it, but me and this challenge have really changed my life. Now I have a book. Thank you 78,000 times. Okay, I'm stopping there. That is it. If there are any more questions that you have, now that I'm not sharing, I'm going to start my video again. There we go. If there are any more questions, if there is anything else that you want to know, more thoughts that you have, please pop me an email. Helen has asked, what time is the Sunday session? Sunday is the only day I have a hard commitment already, but would like to do both. Helen, it's the same times as these classes. So we have an 11 a.m. session, which is this class, and then we have a 9 p.m. session in the evening. Okay. So I try to keep those times as simple as the same as possible, just because it's easier to keep track of everything. The replay for this class will go out as soon as possible. I'll also include all the links and all the lovely stuff. And I hope you'll join me. I hope this was insightful. I hope it's really going to help you with your story. Are there any more questions? Anything else? Does anyone want to ask more about their characters, about the surprises? Anything? Okay. I think I'm going to set you free then. So go off and have an absolutely lovely day. Okay. Great, Fernando. Excited. Thank you, Helen. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Awesome, Chrissy. So nice to see you again. Okay, friends. Goodbye. Good luck and have so much fun with your writing. Okay. I hope, oh, sorry, what are the times of the sessions again, Colin? 11 a.m., whichever time this was for you. This was the 11 a.m. class, and then 9 p.m. my time. So where are you? That also helps, and then we can figure out what the time zones are. But if you pop me an email just with your location, I'll do the math. Okay. Cool stuff. Thank you, friends. Go off and have an absolutely, absolutely awesome week. Thank you, Colin. I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you, Helen, as well. Bye, friends. Have a lovely week.